What's up, people? Welcome back to the channel. So this video right here, I've kind of had it on the back burner for a while. I really wanted to kind of take a little more time, make do a little more editing, this and that. But to be honest, things have not gotten really, I have gotten a little extra time. I am putting videos out every day, trying to get it out, for the channel. But I decided just to go ahead and do the video here. So as you can kind of tell from like the title, and then you can see from the thumbnail. This is, I guess, the quote-unquote the 10 Yu-Gi-Oh betrayals. Pretty much like what I'm saying here is a card that is supposed to be for one deck, but then ends up being used by a whole bunch of other decks, or maybe it's supposed to be the boss monster of one deck, but then it becomes a boss monster of another deck. These are kind of just some of the more like I said, this is just kind of like a list that was kind of like slowly putting together. There are a lot of other cards that could go on this list, so if you kind of have that, like leave them down in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get into it. If you like what we do, please feel free to like and subscribe. If not, it is all cool. Alright, that's out the way. Let's get into the video. Alright, so I want to start this list off with a couple of honorable mentions. Two to be specific. One, Dino Wrestler Pankratops. Dino Wrestler Pankratops has been in side decks since its inception. Dino Wrestlers honestly have not really done anything. Maybe in some meme lists, maybe some obscure local somewhere someone used this deck, but for the most part, everyone just used Pankratops for its ability to summon itself and to out different things. It's a quick effect. It is a really good card, and this is kind of the energy of the list I want to do. Like, it's supposed to be for Dino Wrestler, but it was put in a lot of people's side decks. Another card I want to put on honorable mention list is Artifact Scythe. Now, the reason why Artifact Scythe is not on this list and it's an honorable mention is kind of because not every deck kind of made it its focal point. It was kind of like later on it became an engine with some other cards that are on this list. So Scythe kind of gets like the main honorable mention. Like I wanted to kind of start it off with kind of like Pankratops, but I thought about it. It's like, and this was always a side deck, so I'll make this an honorable mention. And the second honorable mention is Artifact Scythe. This was supposed to be for the Artifact deck, obviously, but a lot of people kind of use it as a side deck option / main deck option, especially when some other cards kind of came out. So let's go ahead and get with number 10 in this list. This list is gonna go. It kind of is, like I said, I explained in the intro, it's split in two parts. So we're gonna start with number 10, and then once we get to to number 5, it'll be the second part of the list. So number 10, I want to start off with is Galaxy Soldier. So it's pretty much in the name. Essentially, this was supposed to be for the Galaxy deck. There's cards. Another card I could have put on this list is Galaxy Photon, which to be honest would have been a decent choice, but Galaxy Soldier is kind of the card that a lot of people, a lot of people are more familiar with, in my opinion, even though there was some times where where the Photon was really meta. But Galaxy Soldier is kind of more known for its use in Cyber Dragon. A lot of people use it to kind of go into the Nova, which will then go into the Infinity. So kind of like this card kind of supposed to being this really good really good searcher for galaxy monsters. It ended up being just a way to summon out Cyber Dragon Nova to make Cyber Dragons, and also Pendulums, because Pendulums were using this card to get Cyber Dragon Nova really good to that extent. So Galaxy Soldier gets number 10 on this list. Alright, number 9 is Cyber Angel Benton. Cyber Angel Benton is essentially a card that was supposed to be for Cyber Angels. Cyber Angels was a ritual, is a ritual archetype that came out. I could see oh man, completely forgot they said that event came out with, drawing a blank on that. But yeah, either way, that is really not the point of this video. Cyber Angel Benton was supposed to be for this Cyber Angel deck, but Drytron and other ritual decks ended up just completely using this effect to be able to gain a massive advantage. So Cyber Angel Benton gets number 9 on this list. Number 8 on this list is Ancient Warrior Oath Double Dragon Lords. This card right here obviously is for the Ancient Warrior archetype. It's supposed to be one of their interruptions, but Tri Brigade seems to use this card way better, way more consistency, and way easier, being the fact that it just needs 2 Beast Warrior monsters. Actually, that really doesn't matter. No, I just said that. But to be honest, the Tri Brigade are able to kind of go around a lot of these different different effects by simply banishing cards from the graveyard to be able to summon this card. So this is actually a really good card that hasn't gotten a reprint. So this could be on the reprint block, and maybe not the Megatins, but like a side set. You might kind of see this card maybe even in the upcoming structure and 2-player decks. You really never know. Konami likes to throw cards in, every once in a while like this to kind of get, extra sales. So this card right here. Coming in at number 7 is Predaplant Orphis Scorpio. Like I said, there's a lot of cards on this list that I kind of could have, really, interchange here and there, but Predaplant Orphis Scorpio, I decided to kind of put it on here, even though I feel like it was used way more than the card that's gonna be ahead of it. The fact that this card wasn't really using any tier 0 strategies, I feel kind of affected its placement in this list. So Predaplant Orphis Scorpio obviously is for the Predaplant archetype, but a lot of the times it was simply used in just a multitude of different decks, specifically to kind of make it easier to get out Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So this is kind of a card where I decided, you know what, I'm gonna put it a little bit lower, a little bit lower in this list, simply because even though it was used in a lot of different decks, it wasn't like it was the top way to get, simply to get this card out. So Predaplant Orphis Scorpio, number 6 on this, number 7 on the list. Number 6 on the list is Mecha Phantom Beast Dracossack. Dracossack was used in a tier 0 strategy. I know there's some people that might want to say dragons, the element dragon, the E-dragons wasn't, tier 0. Some people might say, oh, is this competed with this? No. If you played in that format, you understood why this deck was tier 0. I understand maybe there's certain charts that say this, and certain people might say that, unless you were there playing against this deck was dominant. There was times where I would take decks, there was literally times where I would take a deck like this to a locals, and it wasn't even the best version. I was still new to properly deck building. I did have the internet, everyone had the internet and stuff, but I still would kind of try my own things before I truly understood how this game is supposed to work. And I'd be able to take this to locals and just clean it up, winning, winning boxes, winning this, winning that, second, always topping, getting first, getting second. It was very easy to top with this deck, especially because this card was so expensive and it created such a huge gap. So that's why I kind of decided to put this card, right here at number 6 on the list, at being a card that was obviously supposed to be used for the, for the Mecha Phantom Beast archetype, but just never, it could be used in it obviously, but it's known for its use in Dragon Rollers. Alright, so now that, we've now moved over from, I guess cards that were mostly used in certain decks to cards that were supposed to be, that were supposed to be released to, that were released for their individual archetype, but ended up just making tier 0 status decks, or just being used in so many different ones. So number 5, let's go and start with Isolde Two Tails of the Noble Knight. Everyone knows that Isolde, every single time there is any kind of warrior strategy, Isolde kind of comes out as one of the one of the combo starters. You pretty much look at warrior decks and it says, how easily can this card get 2 warriors? Can it use Isolde? Does it have this? No. Okay, put it to the side. A lot of warrior decks use Isolde to where there was a point where even heroes were using Isolde, even though heroes kind of heroes the way we know it now doesn't rather just use its own engine because it has a lot of more support. But there was a point to where heroes did want to use Isolde, in kind of its combos. Heroes have been through a lot, so Isolde being number 5 right here on my list, just kind of thing. Think about it, you can go back, especially with Goki format. I remember Goki format. There were so many different ways to run Goki. As long as you got those 2 warriors, you essentially had a full combo. So yeah, so Isolde is one of those cards that were just any different warrior deck Isolde was in. It was supposed to be for Noble Knights, but it was just for warrior decks in general. Number 4 on this list, so I guess I cheated a little bit. I'm going to use Dark to kind of represent the entire Charmer Link line, but any Charmer Link monster, the light one, the dark one, the water one, the fire one, the earth one, the wind one, all of them I've decided just to kind of clump in this number 4 section, because there will never be a moment in the Yu-Gi-Oh game to where there is not a pure dark light wind, water deck out there. Like you feel me? Like there's always going to be that in Yu-Gi-Oh. There's never going to be a moment to where the only good decks are like a complete mixture. And even if they are a complete mixture, it just essentially means that you could either just run the Charmer that they run more of, you know, like if they run more darks than lights, then run the dark one. If they run a mixture, then, you know, maybe even run all three. Essentially, this is like a really good way to this is like a really good way to like easily link climb or to get extra advantage off of your opponent's graveyard, especially like you know, maybe even in the mirror match. If you're running time mirror match, there's a lot of different uses that this card has. So I decided just to go and put this in the number 4 slot, just because any deck could use this. Any deck is going to want to have this in their arsenal, especially to play against certain decks. So I'm just going to go and call them the Elemental Link Charmers. All of them deserve the number 4 spot, in my opinion. Number 3 is Blackwing Gofu, the Vague Shadow. So there's probably, I'm pretty sure like people are kind of like, well, wait a minute, you had the freaking Charmers that are used in like a whole bunch of different decks, but then you put this random black, you know, like, well, I don't say random, but this Blackwing, you know, this Blackwing monster is supposed to take number 3. And yes, the reason why is because this card cannot get unbanned, and the reason why this card cannot get unbanned, of course, maybe, you know, like Konami can always change their mind, but for the most part, this card cannot get unbanned just because of the amount of advantage that this card generates by itself. And like, if you have no cards, you're essentially starting your turn with 3 monsters. And in the Link era, like back when you only had the extra monster zone, this card was like a mandatory. You had to run Go for the Vague Shadow. This was the way that you got into your Link plays. This was how you did it. There was like when this card got banned, I think this card and Level Eater got banned in the same list. It was actually, that actually really slowed the game down to the point where we were like, we went into like Link form and like, okay, we're just gonna run this and we'll run that and then this, and okay, yeah, we're good. Once all this stuff got hit, that's kind of when Link format, like, that's pretty much kind of when everyone was kind of like, okay, yeah, this really does kind of mess up a lot of decks. Like, I shouldn't say slow Yu-Gi-Oh down, because Yu-Gi-Oh didn't inherently get too much slower, even though that's what kind of some people kind of think and say. To be honest, Yu-Gi-Oh just kind of got way more restrictive to where it's like, you know, like you could run this and this deck. Now it's like, no, you have to run these cards to get these cards out, and if you can't, then your deck doesn't work. You have to run one of these decks. So so like the Gofu really kind of made it to where you could run almost not any deck, but a lot of different decks. Just made it easier to go into Link format. And once it was gone, that's kind of when you saw like you know, kind of this more like degenerate kind of Yuling strategies that kind of like came up. So Gofu, being how impactful it was for like the Link era, like just because of how impactful it was in that era, and the fact that once it was gone, I really felt like, man, like now, like this is really Link Yu-Gi-Oh. Like when this card was around, Links were not really too much of a hindrance to different decks, but then when this card was gone, it's like, wow, yeah, like if you're not running a deck that could properly like work with Link summoning, then you shouldn't just run that deck in the first place. So Go for the Vague Shadow, kind of like being that definitive card that kind of made, you know, that made Links easy. And then the second it was gone, bam, it was just like, okay, like if you're not running the Link deck, then you suck. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and put it at number 3 on my list. Number 2 is Destiny Hero Malicious. So kind of similar to the reason why I put Gofu on the list at number 3. Destiny Hero Malicious, ever since its inception, for the most part, has been, how do I use this to go into my extra deck, and not my hero extra deck. Like, it isn't like, you know, like, it isn't like right now. I know a lot of people are thinking like, oh, I see a lot of people combo off in, you know, in Destiny Hero decks and Omni Hero decks and this deck. Like, yeah, well, yes, now, because there's a lot of, like, you know, hero support that can take advantage of this, and you have the Denier to recycle it. But when this card was at 3, the main thing was like synchro summoning. Like this right here, being a level 6, making it easier to go into level 8s. Really, that's the reason why this card was put on the list in the first place. And every single deck, like almost every deck, there was a very small amount of decks that were not using Destiny Hero Malicious, especially with the Edison kind of being revived as it is, and you having more modern players and a more, you have more eyes on the format, and you have like a lot of different people kind of looking at the format and kind of like testing with it. You see Malicious in a lot of different decks, and you kind of see how impactful this card is. I remember that even after Edison in 2012, for a while, when this card was at 1, no use. But the second this card would kind of come back at 2 or 3, then bam, it was just used in like non-stop synchro strategies, zombie strategies, anything that would send stuff to the graveyard to take advantage of this, Destiny Hero Melissa's engine. The second that you could take advantage of it, people would take advantage. So like the fact that this card needs to be on the semi-limit list, the fact that like the second it's at 3, a whole bunch of different decks will want to use it. The fact that ever since almost ever since its inception, it has simply been a high impact card in the Yu-Gi-Oh meta. I decided to put this card as the number 2 card released for a specific archetype that was used in a whole bunch of different decks. So let's go with number 1. What do I got as number 1? That is Crystron Halki Fibrax. So maybe some of you people might not agree with my choice as putting Halki Fibrax as number 1, but I'm gonna be honest with you. There was no one, I mean no one, playing this card in its proper freaking deck. I'm not gonna lie, even Predaplant or for Scorpio was played in his own deck. There was some people kind of experimenting with this deck, and yes, I know there might be a Crystron player out there that's like, I use this deck. No, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to like the 0.0000001% of people out there that use Crystron Halki Firex in a Crystron deck. There was no one using this card outside of any different deck. Whether you were like, this was a card right here that pretty much that kind of made this extremely popular. This right here was a good side deck option, but then once we got Halki Fibrax, this right here became a main deck option to where this was your win condition. I ran windups at one point where I was like thinking, man, this is crazy. You could summon Halki Fibrax. You could summon, Halki Fibrax and freaking windups, hit them with a Scythe Lock, and actually play windups in freaking 2022, like before this card was banned. I think even 2023 I tried to experiment with it, but then Scythe got banned, and then eventually this card got banned too. So it's just so crazy how this card went from it went from like, oh, okay, we're going to use the carrier, and then it's like, yeah, get rid of carrier. It's like, okay, we could use the Link Cross, get rid of the Link Cross. We could use Auroradon, we could use this, and it's like, I get rid of that too. And then it's like, okay, well then we're going to summon these tuners, let's get rid of those tuners. And it's like, okay, well then we're going to summon, we're going to sit there and, help a combo bring out Artifact Scythe. And it's like, finally, after all these random decks that had nothing to do with Crystron, using this card to go into a whole bunch of different meta strategies, they finally had to get rid of this card, and that's why I've decided to put this card as the number 1 card released for that is supposed to be for a specific archetype, but ended up being used in a whole bunch of other decks or a different strategy altogether. Alright guys, if you agree with my list, let me know down below. If you disagree, let me down below. Let me know down below. Let me know if there's other cards that maybe I missed. Like maybe there's some other cards that you're like, oh, you missed this, and I want to talk about this. Maybe I'll do another video as a part 2 to this video. But this is kind of like, I felt pretty like comfy about this. I kind of I thought about it, and this is, these are all the different cards that I felt were released, like for one archetype, but then ended up helping either another one or a whole bunch of other ones. Alright guys, peace out, and I'll catch you in the next one.